So welcome. Thank you for spending your Friday with us. We're so excited to see your faces or just your names. Do not feel obligated to have your camera on one bit. Our cameras will be on, but you can take yours off. But this is the Fellowship for the Future informational session number 2. And I'll start off with just giving a quick overview that our team will introduce ourselves. And then I will go through the presentation that talks a little bit about the broader 500 Women Scientists organization, where fellowship kind of originated from, the program details, and then at the end, we'll save time for questions. But feel free to ask questions throughout in the chat. Our 2 team members will let me know, and we can stop and address questions, or we can save them for the end. So we can get started. My name is Lauren Edwards. I am a neuroscientist by training, and I am the director of Fellowship for the Future, and I'm currently the interim executive director of 500 Women Scientists. So I'm really excited to be here, and I will kick it over to Cicely.
Hey everyone, I am Cicely Payne. I use she, her pronouns. I am the program manager for Fellowship for the Future. I have been working with 500 Women Scientists since October, so I'm still a little newish, and I am not a scientist by trade. I'm a lot of things, but scientist is not one that I would name. But love science, and super glad to be a part of this team. And I will kick it over to Uqbad.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Uqbad Kosar, pronouns she, her as well. And I'm a volunteer with the Fellowship for the Future. I'm a forest scientist by training. I work in climate policy during the day, and then I try to support the fellowship however I can in my free time. I'll pass it back to Lauren.
Yeah, thanks. This is part of our team. We have a couple more team members that I'll discuss and show pictures of, but we're happy to be here. So first, we will kick it off with discussing the broader organization. So 500 Women Scientists is a global grassroots nonprofit organization, and we look to enact change at 3 different levels. So we consider ourselves grassroots because we work through our local chapters, which are called pods. It's a well reference, and we have over 500 pods around the world. About 175 of them are US based and the rest are international. And through our pods and our national leadership team, we aim to do 3 broad things, which is change the face of science. So that way, when you think of who a scientist is or who a broader STEM professional is, it's not just the traditional like older white male that I think a lot of people have in their purview. To build collective power and to hold institutions accountable. And to do this, we have various projects as an organization. So Fellowship for the Future is one of those projects. We also have our Gauge directory, which was newly just released, the new name. And that is a search database for STEM professionals, women and gender minorities. We also have our Wikipedia edit-a-thons where we take a cohort and we train them on how to edit biographies on Wikipedia. So that way we can edit women and gender minorities biographies on there, because like Wikipedia is one of the most used sites, but I think it's like only like 15% or 18% women. So we want to, kind of change that face. So we just have various projects that you can learn more about on our website, 500womenscientists.org. And our values are rooted in a lot of things. We have 9 values, but I listed the ones here that I think are most applicable to fellowship and kind of where fellowship originated. And that's to, identify structural inequities, push for equality, stand up for, those who routinely face discrimination, push to develop and strengthen access for traditionally underrepresented groups to become leaders in science. And we're seeing now, I think, especially in the age of COVID, like how necessary it is to have the experts speaking, but then also to have representation. Like one of the big things I've been reading about a lot lately is, vaccinations in the Black community. And just being able to have that, not only that representation, but that knowledge base and that trust base to kind of, build it in the community and make them feel comfortable. So that's a really huge thing for science, medicine, broadly speaking. Stepping outside of our research disciplines to engage with the public, that's also something we do and really enjoy, which is kind of where the vein of fellowship comes in as far as being a community-based project. and then using language and the wonder of science to enhance global diplomacy. So the 500 Women Scientists was actually born out of the 2016 US election when Trump won, and it was 4 women at University of Boulder, climate scientists wrote this pledge in Scientific America, basically pledging that, they were committed to making science open, inclusive, and accessible. And so the name 500 Women Scientists comes because they wanted 500 women scientists to sign on. It of course, blew up. And I think within like 3 or 4 months, there was like 20,000 signatures. And eventually our organization just stopped counting. And so we're called 500 scientists, but there are so many of us, and our reach spans around the world, which is awesome. This past summer, we recently released an updated mission and kind of like a new style guide. And so our mission is to still make science more open, inclusive, and accessible, but we also included the words about transforming society by fighting racism, patriarchy, and oppressive societal norms, because we do try and push for justice and equity. And so that was really important to add that to our mission and know that's what we're fighting for. And so a couple of things I will say about our organization, we are continuously having conversations around language, which will come up in a little bit when we kind of talk about eligibility for fellowship. But we are called 500 Women Scientists. There are not only 500 of us, we're not only women, and we're not only scientists. So, we include gender minorities. It's really hard to kind of find a word that includes everyone because in trying to define, you actually kind of become exclusionary. So, but we accept anyone that thinks that they feel that they belong with us. So it was initially women because women were really kind of othered in science, but that's everyone. So you can be non-binary, gender non-conforming, cis, trans, we welcome you, we fight for you, we want you here. And the same thing for non-scientists. First off, we consider science in a very broad sense of the term, right? We all do science in our daily lives. Like if you cook, that's a type of science. But then also including, technologists, engineers, mathematicians, physicians, nurses, PAs, all of that. So I just want to make that disclaimer that we're including all those people. Our name is just still 500 Women Scientists, but these are conversations we're routinely having. And so one of the great things about Fellowship for the Future is that it has these tenets of being based in the community, and which is huge, right? We know that I think for a lot of us, we kind of get our start in the community and mentors that we have, and especially when you may not see that all the time within your schools, especially people who look like you doing the work you want to do. We came with this tenet that the Fellowship for the Future would be by women of color. And so we have our team here, as you met me, Cicely, and Ukbad, but we also, our current member on our team is Stephanie Bodison. She is a assistant professor at University of Southern California. She does rehabilitation, and she's great, and she kind of does the fellowship programming. And then fellowship was started by Susan and Shayla, who really got us up off the ground, and Natalie and Gabriella were instrumental in our first cohort, which we officially launched last year. So we have one cohort so far, and this is a 2-year fellowship program. And I think what's really important, at least for me personally, in this tenet of it being by women of color, is I've been a part of several diversity initiatives where the people in charge of the initiative don't look anything like me, and, which is always kind of a little bit of a cognitive dissonance because you're touting diversity and equity, but you don't have people who are diverse leading it or who specialize in that work. So we are women of color. Of course, our experiences are not we don't have one experience to cover everybody, but I think it's important to say, we have that representation. We care about that, and it's important to us that women of color are here doing the work. So it's by women of color, for women of color. So this is our first cohort of fellows who officially started January 1st, 2020. They're amazing. We actually kicked off the launch in New York City And we had like a weekend long event, like a summit launch is what we called it, where we got to like see everybody in person. Of course, thanks to COVID, we're not seeing anybody in person right now, but it was a really great time to meet them and spend time and kind of grow together as we then switched to being virtual. So we have Jasmine Drake, who is a forensic chemist, and she's now tenured associate professor at Texas Southern University. And her project originally was supposed to bring in um, Black and brown girls from the community to come to TSU and into her lab and actually do this like CSI themed week-long event where like they would be having to learn how to take note of a crime scene and bag evidence and everything. And then it was going to end actually with a culmination of this like mock trial. So they have to use the evidence to then prove if someone was guilty, I guess. So that was supposed to be really exciting. Of course, COVID happened. So we're currently adapting all the projects. So now she's looking at actually making CSI themed kits and like with instructions and potentially doing like a YouTube video with her beautiful daughter, who's so rambunctious, to walk the kids and their parents through how to do these kind of CSI themed ideas at home. So that's Jasmine. We have also Kelly Montgomery, who is a chemical biologist, and she is a PhD student. And her project is actually super cool, and it's comics. So she actually has a company with two other partners, JKX Comics. And so her proposal was to highlight women of color in STEM, and then do like one comic book part that's dedicated to kind of showing the like the personable parts of the person. So not like their science or their field, but like who they are as people. Because I think that's also often a big disconnect with like the public. They don't realize, like we're people too. We love all the things that they do. And it makes it more personable. And then to also have a comic book that talks about their science. So she is still working on that. And her company actually did a anthology, and they're about to do a Kickstarter campaign to benefit the Madison Reading Project. So super awesome. Rose Bear Don't Walk, she is an ethnobotanist, and she actually graduated like right when we started the fellowship. So now she's doing super great things like being the first ever Indigenous rotating host of the Sci Show on PBS, which you can check on YouTube for. It's amazing, and the comments were great about it. And they're just like little snippets talking about cool different things. And she was originally supposed to do something with her reservation. So it's the Flathead Reservation in Montana, where it was like a plant guide to, the different plants, what you can eat, how you can prepare them. So it's a really cool idea that has also been paused because of COVID. But right now what she's doing is making plant-based medicinal care packages for tribal communities in Montana that are impacted by COVID. So that is really great. And then last but not least is Shauna Leith. She is an assistant professor at UVA, and she is a psychologist who studies Black girls and their parents' resiliency, which is just mind blowing. She has several pieces that you could read, which have touched me. I mean, of course, as a Black woman, but just in general, just amazing work. And she is doing a project where she is coordinated with a housing project in Charlottesville that has predominantly Black girls. And the idea was to take the girls and their parents to different like explorations around the city, to introduce them to different like science museums, different outings, and really have that parental participation as well, and kind of expose their parents too, because there's a lot, even like, our parents don't know. But of course, with COVID, we're currently trying to figure out if it's possible to do that this summer, or if she needs to do something that's completely remote. So COVID kind of threw us a huge curveball. And one of the things I will say is really nice about this fellowship specifically is that we have prioritized our fellows. So, no one was expected to, have these expectations to like show up and perform and, act like everything's okay. Once COVID hit, we just kind of were like, hey, what can we do? How can we show up for you? How can we support you? We know your projects are not at the top of anyone's mind because right now we're all in survival mode. So the projects didn't get kicked off like we started, but we would do that every time over because we prioritize, who our fellows are as people. And we understand like we're all struggling, and there was a lot of racial tension and injustices that we were dealing with and coping with. So it was a really rough summer. So I think it was good to be able to connect with one another and lean on one another, and prioritize that over kind of productivity. And so one of the really great things about being in this broader organization is that our entire network is just looking for how can we help our fellows. And so while we do have a fellowship team that does kind of like the weekly task related fellowship, like our whole team, our whole 500 Sciences team is amazing. So our partnerships team linked us up with Lifology, which is a domain that's like kind of artistic way to combine science with the arts. And so they launched this series for these cards that are spotlighting women who are doing amazing but often like under promoted work. And so we have a partnership with them. And so all of our fellows were featured. So they each got these like really cool card decks. And so like the first card is these pictures that you see, and then there are two more cards that talk about like kind of cool facts about our fellows and how you can reach them. And these cards were linked to their platform in our Gauge directory, which is our search database. So like that was super cool. And I think even Jasmine was she was requested to speak several different places from her being on Gauge and people finding her and people seeing her card. So there are a lot of opportunities, and that's really one of the big tenets, is to have this amplification. And within our network, we can do that. And we're constantly figuring out new ways to amplify and show up for our fellows. So this one was one of my favorite ones. Okay, so now we're getting to Fellowship for the Future. So it is a 2-year leadership award program for women of color, and it's focused on increasing equity, inclusion, accessibility, or social justice within science, technology, engineering, math, and/or medicine-related fields. So what I'll call STEM for the rest of the talk. And the proposed projects must, 1, directly involve and benefit chosen community members. And so I think community is typically thought of being based off locality. So, what's in proximity to you. But one, we know with COVID, that's not really an option. But also, we think bigger than that. So they can, the community you choose can have shared goals, interests, and/or identities. And we welcome all intersection of identities for your community members. 2, the projects must reflect approximately 100 to 150 hours per year of the fellow's time, and these efforts towards project design, implementation, and completion. And so the reason why that's there, we do not log your hours. I want to be transparent about that. It's not, you don't log your hours at all. It's just last time we saw that there were people who were submitting projects that were much smaller in nature. And so we wanted to kind of help give context to where the project should align time-wise. So it's just a ballpark figure for you to see, how much time you should be spending. I will say some of the projects that we're currently funding, they were like going to be a culmination of maybe like a summer each year. So a lot of the time would have been spent towards getting the design and implementation ready. And then the execution is maybe just like a week or a few weeks. And that's perfectly fine, because we also understand, right, like this is not your primary job or anything like that. But we do want to make sure that the projects are impactful enough, right, to leave a lasting impact on your communities. And then 3, projects must utilize financial and logistical support from the 500 Women Scientists Leadership Team. So we'll go through the financials in like a slide or two, but the logistical support is really kind of up to you. We try and make ourselves available to help out, especially for like amplification and things you may need, but it's totally up to you how much you want us involved in that project. We are a team of 2 part-time paid employee staff and then 2 volunteers, right? So our capacity, we can't provide extensive logistical support, but definitely enough to help you figure out what are your outcomes, what are your metrics, how best to go about promoting, and things of that nature. Okay, so we have eligibility. So self-identified women of color. So of course, women and color are the ones that are usually the trickiest. So like I mentioned before, we know language is important, and we have had these conversations a lot about how to make it seem as inclusive as possible. And so just to be clear, when we say women, We do, also include, cis and trans women, people who are, non-binary, gender non-conforming. It's totally welcome. As same thing for color. The racial and ethnic backgrounds are typically, underrepresented in STEM are Black, Latinx, Native American, Asians, especially in leadership. But we're not going to, tell you whether or not if you qualify. It is totally up to you to self-identify. If you think this fellowship speaks to you, if you think you would be a good fit, then we want you to apply. It is completely on you to determine, where you stand for women of color. And the other part is who have demonstrated an extensive commitment to justice and equity within a STEM field. So last cycle, we had the requirement of a degree, either pursuing or having already been awarded a degree. We took away that requirement in order to be more equitable. We understand that there are a lot of routes of training that do not always result in a degree, and that formal education is not the only way to be trained or to be an expert. And so we wanted to acknowledge and appreciate that. With that said, a lot of us, the route we go is formal education. So that's fine too, but we wanted to remove that requirement and instead say demonstrated extensive commitment. We also chose not to give like exact parameters around what that would mean because it looks very different. And once again, if we give you parameters, then it could become exclusionary and we can miss out on someone great. So if you think it's extensive, if you think, you have a really strong footing within a STEM field and you feel confident to take that into the community and teach the community, then definitely apply. The last part is that applicants must be residing in the United States or a United States territory for the duration of the fellowship term. And so that is specifically just because for travel. So this was before COVID, but even now we're going to have travel restrictions, I think, based off, they're saying like a COVID vaccine passport. There are a lot of things that are unknown. If we are able to travel during the duration of your fellowship, because it's 2 years long, then we would come together probably once or twice a year, and that would be paid for by the fellowship. And in that case, we would need you to be able to travel within the United States. So we just restricted it to people who reside in the US because we can't help with like visas or statuses or anything like that. We don't have those resources. So you do have to be in the United States. You do not have to be a citizen. So the only thing we'll ask on the application is like the zip code you reside in, but you do not have to be a US citizen to apply. We're working out how we would give out the financial award. And so I think someone needs to have a tax number, which there are a couple ways you can do that, even if you're not a citizen. So we're still working out those details, but definitely do not need to be a citizen to apply. So the program details. As mentioned before, we prioritize ensuring that the fellows can receive the care and support needed to continue doing their necessary life's work. This work is so important, especially the community-based work, and we know it's kind of often underappreciated in certain spheres. I personally experienced that in academia when pursuing my graduate degree, and we know that not only is it undervalued, but then it's often not used as like a metric that you can like put on your CV, or it's not as always amplified or rewarded. So we wanted to make sure to do that with this fellowship. And so we understand that also we do not have any restrictions on career stage or discipline. So in order to transcend both of those, we crafted the fellowship experience around 3 pillars. The first being the development of a personal mentoring network to nurture women of color scientists, including that safe space for resiliency, and also to be real about what you're experiencing in different settings. I think we had a conversation with the fellows this past semester, and one of them was like, "I feel oppressed." And I was like, me too. Like, I get that. Like, I get that, in my soul. So, just to have that kind of candid space, to have that kind of dialogue, I think is important. The second pillar is to development of advocacy skills on behalf of self and diverse populations, because, we're going into these communities that are typically underserved. And so we want to make sure that, we're well versed in that, because there's a lot of things to unpack as people, a lot of things we've learned and been taught. And so we want to make sure that we have the advocacy skills and the language to do that with our fellows. And then also brand development, to be able to leverage your personal brand, but then also like your, community-based efforts in your communications, and also, as you're preparing to apply for whatever the next step is in your career. Okay, and so what do you get? This is always like the good part, right? Because it's the money part. So first, each fellow will receive a one-time taxable $7,500 honorarium. And so it is taxable. So what happens is each fellow is going to be given a 1099 at the end of the year. We do not remove taxes up front. So that is your responsibility to put aside whatever money you would need for that to pay taxes on it, but it is taxable. And that you're going to get that within the first 2 months of starting the fellowship all at once. And then we have an annual $1,250 in supplemental project funds. So that $1,250 is going to be dispersed towards beginning of first year, and then again second year. So it's $2,500 total. And so it is this $2,500 total that in your application you are allocating your budget for. So the $7,500, the honorarium, that is for you. That's to thank you and honor you for doing this work. So it is payment for that. You are allowed to spend that however you would like. The $2,500 in the project funds, that in order for that not to be taxable, you have to turn in receipts for those, whatever you spend on your project. And so we have like a system set up for that so that you turn in receipts as you go. And then at the end of your fellowship, our accountant just, make sure everything's squared away, and then you're not responsible, the money's not responsible to you for taxes. And in addition to the money, you're also going to have money for travel funds to attend our 500 Women Scientists meetings. So the broader organization has 2 meetings a year. One is more like a work meeting to kind of like set the direction of the organization and to figure out planning. The other meeting is a retreat. So it's just kind of like team bonding, to just kind of love on one another, have good times together in person, because our teams are spread out all across the US and we have other team members a part of the world. So just to kind of come together. So right now, obviously our team meetings are virtual because of COVID. But in the case that we are safe to travel, hopefully next year, then the fellows would be invited and expected to come, and that would be paid for by the fellowship. And then lastly, kind of one of the bigger things is just having that support community and resources that's provided by being able to network with your current your cohort of fellows, but then also the other cohort of fellows, because the 2-year program there is overlap, which is really great, and there'll be overlap with the next cohort, and then we have our broader leadership team, our advisory board, and then we have this amazing network of pods. So there's a lot of opportunities for you all to kind of really like come in and enjoy and get what you need and let us know so we can show up and support you in that. And so one of the huge things I would say is a shout out to our funders. So the way fellowship was initially funded is it's mostly individual donations. It was over 100,000 that allowed for this fellowship to launch. So we're really thankful for everyone. A lot of small donors came together and gave money because they knew how important this cause was. And we also now have grant opportunities from the Simons Foundation, their Science Sandbox, and also the New England Biolabs Foundation. And so the New England's Biolabs Foundation actually gave us money for the workshops. So let me see this next slide. Yes, okay.
Before we move to the next, Lauren, can you just quickly talk a little bit more about how we're able to provide the $1,250 annual stipends without those funds being taxed?
Oh, yeah. No, that's a great question. Okay, so the way that works, so the honorarium will probably be released as a check. Last time it was given as a check at our summit. So honorarium comes that way. The project funds, we usually like send those out through PayPal, if you have a PayPal account, or we find a way to get those funds to you. And so the way it's not taxable is you have to submit receipts for your purchases. So what will happen is at the end of your tenure of your fellowship, then you would have receipts that should equal at least the $2,500 that were spent. And so what we did was we set up a system where fellows can submit their receipts as they go, and we just collect them and we have them waiting until the end of your fellowship. And that's when we work with our accountant to make sure everything adds up. So as long as you provide receipts, then that money is not taxable. If we weren't to receive receipts, or there was a certain part of the money that there were no receipts for, let's say you didn't spend 500 and you didn't return that money, then that money is then taxable, because as a nonprofit, we are a 501c3, we have to keep track of where the money goes. And if that money is unaccounted for, then you would be responsible for paying taxes on it. Any other questions?
There are a couple other questions, but I'm going to let you keep going before I throw those out to you.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you. So fellows are expected to lead their community-based projects across the duration of the 2-year fellowship. So we expect that each project should have an iteration across the 2 years. So if you only do summers, that's fine, but we expect then each year of the fellowship would have a summer component. So you couldn't basically do your project, the entirety in the first year, because we expect you to have 100 to 150 hours per year allocated towards your projects. So that's kind of like your biggest responsibility. And then we also ask or require that you participate in quarterly virtual workshops. So I was saying with our funder for the New England Biolabs Foundation, they created a social justice philanthropy fund, actually, which awarded us a grant. And it's a really cool structure. So what we're going to do is we have some money put aside per workshop. So we'll do 4 a year, and half the money will go towards paying a woman of color to host a workshop. And we basically asked our fellows, what are some of the things you want and need right now around our pillars? And one of the responses we got, I think, in our last meeting was like website, like how to build a website. And that deals a lot with, your brand as well. So we're going to find a woman of color who's an expert in that. We're going to pay her to create this, really cool, about 2-hour long interactive experience for the fellows. And then we're going to edit that video and be able to post that as a broader resource for women of color in STEM to look at. But we're also going to have some money put aside that we can divvy up amongst the fellows and provide kind of like tangible assets that can go along with the theme of each workshop. So like maybe we provide money for you to purchase a website domain for like a year or 2, or something along those lines. So that way the fellow will have like the interactive experience of the workshop, but then they're also gonna like leave with like a gift package from the workshop to how to apply those skills. So I'm super excited about that. Very grateful to New England Biolabs because we're excited to see what we can cook up. And so in addition to those kind of like skills related workshops, we'll also do quarterly virtual community building sessions. And that's just with the fellows and the fellowship team to kind of really like show up for one another, love on one another, just have kind of that space. Fellows are also expected to attend 1 weekend long 500 Women Scientists Leadership Retreat. As I mentioned, those right now are currently virtual. But we're hoping that maybe next year we'll be able to travel. But you're expected to attend one of those, and then you have to sign up for the directory. It used to be called Request to Women in STEM. It is now Gauge. So that is reflected on the website. So yeah, those are the expectations. And I will say, as far as broader opportunities in 500 Women Scientists, that is totally up to you as an individual. So I know our fellow Rose co-wrote a piece with 3 or 4 members on our leadership team, including one of the co-founders, about like climate change, and that one was published in Bitch Media. And then both Shauna and Jasmine have been active in like our newly forming Black Women Collective that we like are in the midst of starting. And I think they both also signed on to like a rebuttal that we wrote to a research article released in Nature. So there are definitely opportunities, and some of them, like, they're not expected of you at all, but we'll send your way and we'll say like, hey, are you interested? And if so, if you have the capacity, you're more than welcome to join. And there's there are a lot of projects that we have. So even if something we don't necessarily bring to you, you are more than welcome to get connected. Everyone, when we have like our leadership meetings and we do updates on our WOOF-PAC, everyone's like, how are the fellows? And they're so excited to see what the fellows are doing and like, how can we help and support? So, you know, if you want to do more and be more interactive, that is totally up to you. But we want to be clear too about what your expectations are versus what just the opportunities are if you're interested. Okay, so the application details, we've just extended the deadline. So the deadline is now February 5th. This will not be extended again. So please make sure your stuff is in by then, because that is the final extension. It's February 5th. We want to make sure we have a lot of applications, a lot of great applications that we had time to spread the word. So February 5th at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So it's almost 3 a.m. Eastern. You have to submit your application. If you go to our website, it has the like more detailed like formatting guidelines and requirements. I'm just going to briefly go over what we're asking in a general sense, but you can look up the specifics. So one is a project proposal that is describing the project design and implementation. And in that, you also have to like include COVID considerations because that's a very real thing as we're seeing. It's not going away anytime soon. And so this is just really like introducing to us your project. You'll tell us like the name of your project. And that is like one of the really big pieces of the application. So I definitely spend time on that. You're also going to submit a budget narrative describing the use of the annual $1,250 funds. So mind you, that is $2,500 across the 2 years. On our website, we provide like a sample table about how to like show what the funds are. These are of course just estimated funds. These are just how you anticipate using it. It's not binding that you use it in that way. But this is so we understand like what are the costs associated with it. If your budget narrative is in excess of 2,500, then it's something you may want to include just like where that other money would be coming from, or you know whether or not if your project's contingent upon that difference, because 2,500 is the fixed amount for your project. We also asked for 2 letters of support that endorse the applicant's experiences with equity within STEM and community-based initiatives. So this is the letters of support we're looking for are a little bit different, I think, than what most people are used to, especially in an academic setting or a job setting. We don't necessarily want a letter of support from your principal investigator if they're not at all familiar with the work you do in the community or like your justice work. So like you could have people who are mentors, people who are mentees. You could have someone who's a part of the community that you've impacted write the letter. So the idea really is to just see like how have your experiences been and what's that impact like? So I would say, choose smartly about who your letters of support come from, and don't think it necessarily relies upon the like credentials of the letter writer. Like it doesn't have to be, on fancy letterhead. We're not expecting the letters to come from people with PhDs. Like I want to make that really clear. Choose people who have been impacted by you. That will go really far. You also have a resume that'll highlight just your significant experiences within STEM and your commitment to equity and social justice. So that is important because we don't have a degree requirement. So we want to make sure that you highlight, what have you done? And it can be that it's been a degree and research and things along those natures, but it may not be. So just make sure your resume really reflects that. And then the last thing you'll submit is a video summary describing your interest in fellowship and your anticipated contributions to advancing equity and justice within STEM. So that video summary is 60 seconds or less, and you will upload that to YouTube, and then you'll submit a URL in your application. Excuse me. So we have resources provided on the website about how to do all these things, because what you'll ultimately submit is one package, like one application package. It'll be a PDF, and we outline like there are formatting requirements. There are requirements to the order that these different parts need to appear in. You have to submit your URL, and your video has to be viewable to the public. So there are some like extra things you want to pay attention to, because applications that are received after the deadline or that do not meet the formatting requirements, including page lengths, which is huge, then those applications will not go on to be reviewed. So I can't stress this enough. Please check. There is an accessibility guide for how to format your application together. There's an example. So we try to make it really transparent. But we really need you to follow the way, because it'll just make reviewing easier on our end.
Lauren, before we go forward, I think that the questions that have come in are all kind of centered around some of the stuff that you've been talking about on this slide. So I will toss those out to you now. You answered this earlier, but I just want to reaffirm. There was a question with regard to including information about COVID considerations in your proposals. And so you definitely want to do that. This is the place that we're at right now. And yeah, it's going to be necessary. So then the next question is, will the reviewers actually consider applicants that do not have higher education, graduate degree level formal education? Considering that, our current fellows all have or are working on advanced degrees, really just wanting to assess how folks who don't have those more formal educational backgrounds will be considered, with regard to the review process.
Yeah, no, that is a great question. So the way we structured it, so there are a few things. Our review process, the way it works, so last time it was all women of color who reviewed. And that's why we asked that the application be set up in a certain way. So the project proposal and the budget narrative are weighed the most, like the heaviest on our review. So it's really like, what is your project? What's its potential for impact? How have you thought about kind of like the logistics of it? That is weighed the most. And then letters of support is weighed the most heavy next. And that is right, like other people vouching for you having done that work. The resume is just used to confirm that, yes, you have experiences within STEM and you have, experiences that show your commitment. The review team is given a manual, and the manual addresses biases, right? Like how to confront your biases before starting review. It addresses examples of the things we're looking for. And in there, it's going to be made explicitly clear, like it is not required that an individual have this advanced degree. And at no point in the review rubric is that a question that would be asked, or like any points are assigned to that. It's just, do they have significant experiences? And so internally, we will have to give a couple guidelines to our reviewers, but it does not have to be an advanced degree. And one of the things too, I will say that we're trying to do better this time is also spread the word to more community-based organizers and organizations. I think we have a big presence, 500 Scientists especially has a big presence in the academy, but we're not exclusive to the academy. So all of our fellows were also had an institutional affiliation last year, but we are really trying hard to diversify that. So that's actually one of our big tenets.
Okay, thanks. And then a last question is maybe I see another thing coming through. Is with regard to resume and CV. So, a question about whether those are interchangeable as long as formatting requirements are met.
Yeah, that's a good question. We probably should say resume/CV. Yes, they definitely are interchangeable in this sense, as long as formatting requirements are met. So you have a 2-page maximum. So, typical resumes are like 1 page long, and you could submit it if it was 1 page. You don't have to do 2 pages, but your 2 pages is your max. So please do not submit, a 7-page CV and think that it's going to work, because that will disqualify your application because it does not meet the 2-page maximum. So yes, I'm using resume and CV interchangeable. We also don't specify the headers or anything like that, because your experiences could be really different, I think. And especially me personally, I've been in the academy, so what a resume or a CV or a bio sketch looks like for me may be different for someone who's trained other routes. So just stick to the formatting and it'll be perfectly fine. We're good? All right. Okay, so the anticipated timeline. As I mentioned, we just extended the deadline for our only extension. So it's going to be February 5th at 11:59. We are currently getting our review system set up. So in February, we will review all the applications. And then in March, we will interview the finalists and selections will be made. So for transparency's sake, thanks to Simons Foundation, we have the funds to support 5 fellows this year. So 1 more than last year. So there'll be 5 fellows. So we foresee interviewing about 10 people. And then the selections will be made. We will extend an offer, and once fellows accept, we will announce the fellowship cohort on April 1st. And so because it is a 2-year fellowship, the fellowship ends March 31st, 2023. So that is the timeline. Yeah, those are the big things. Yeah, you would expect to hear from us in March. So yeah, those are the main things. I'm ready for any questions.
Okay, so we have a question that's come in. So the question is about current location. So this person is temporarily not located in the US because of COVID, but will be traveling back to the US as soon as that is possible. And so just wondering how that might impact their eligibility to apply for the fellowship.
Yeah, COVID really is just changed everything. So in that case, if you plan on coming back, it's for where you intend to be for the duration of the fellowship. So if you intend to be here for the duration of the fellowship, then totally apply. We don't, and I will say, I think on the application, you're supposed to give a zip code. So I would put the zip code you would plan to be in during that time.
Okay. So another question that has come in. Okay, sorry, just scrolling to make sure. I knew there was another one and then I couldn't find it. Okay, so just a general question about if we're thinking about the qualities that reviewers would be looking for. Obviously, we can't get super into specifics about well, we want someone who has this and this and this. But yeah, thinking about what are some of the sort of ideal qualities, characteristics that reviewers may be looking for.
Wow. Their qualities are so I feel like I should have an answer ready to go for that. And I was a reviewer last cycle too. I think the biggest thing is the project. I think one of the things that I'm really hoping to see is kind of a lot of unique takes on how to do this, especially in COVID, especially with having to consider that you may at least part of your project is going to have to be virtual. I think just unique ideas, unique approaches. And I also think, yeah, I think uniqueness is going to be a really great characteristic, because we're always looking for things that may be outside the peer review of what we could think of, things that are typical, There's just like a lot of cool ways to include STEM in just so much that we do and that we are, that I think uniqueness is big. And I also think like, you know, passion for it, which may sound like a very typical answer, but I think when you have, especially when you've been doing this work and you're really passionate about it and making an impact, I think that's huge. And I think those things are very easily conveyed in the proposal and the video summary as well. Um, yeah, so I think those are the things. But then also like they're like feasibility, that is also important. So kind of like the more boring things like feasibility, making sure like the budget makes sense, making sure that you know, the applicant has the ability to carry out the project. You know, ambition is great, but we also don't want it to be like so ambitious that it like nothing comes of the project, right? We want your community, your chosen community to be better because you're a project and you have existed. So I think as long as you meet those tenets, then it should be favorably reviewed. All right. Did we finish on time? Oh, I think I see the chat blinking.
Oh, I thought I unmuted myself. Okay, let's see. I'll just go back up again. Okay, can the $1,250 project funds be used for honorariums? And if so, is there guidance for how to submit receipts for that?
Yeah, and that's a great question. The project funds, which we work with the fellows for, but the project funds are pretty like liberal just for ways you do it. Definitely can be used for honorarium. As far as receipts, I don't think any of our current fellows have used their funds for honorariums, but we would set up that process. Like our organization pays people honorariums. So that definitely is not a problem to have set up and easily doable. But yeah, and I think some of the funds have been used for like travel, you know, to like go pick up supplies. I think Rose's project, she has to drive like a couple hours to get the supplies needed from where she's at. So travel was included in that, like for reimbursement. So yeah, the project funds can go to quite a bit.
So two questions came in back to back. So a quick answer to the first one. Talking about the videos that you include with your application, will those remain internal to 500 Women Scientists? Absolutely, they will not be shared anywhere except for you know, us, the team, and the individuals who are reviewing your application. It won't go any further than that. And then the second question, I will send that to you, Lauren, is around internet accessibility. So because obviously creating the videos, well, the whole thing, like the whole application is submitted online, right? But particularly for, you know, for creating videos, like slow internet speeds, all of those kinds of things. You know, just kind of thinking around how we as an organization may be able to support people to still be able to do you know, those portions of the application if they don't necessarily have access to all of the tools and resources to be able to complete those particular components.
Okay, how we would support that. So that's interesting. I think I would ask that person to email us because off top, I'm not entirely sure how that, off top, I don't know. I don't know. So email us, please. Assistant, can you put the fellowship email in the chat? Email us, let us know what the specific situation is, and we will definitely see what we can do to help. And as far as the videos, I will say, like the videos are not they're not like rated upon like, you know, how fancy they are. You know, you can record them with your phone, you can record them with your computer. Yeah, it can just be a blank, you know, white space behind you. That is totally fine. We really care about the answers, and just kind of being able to, you know, see how you talk about, you know, what you're trying to do. So those definitely don't have to be like high tech quality or anything like that. And yes, it's your videos are only given to your reviewers to look at, but mind you, you are posting them on YouTube. So you'll want to make sure then that it's unlisted, but then viewable by viewable by public. So that way people can't search it, but that way we can still see it. And then once you have like a final determination from us about, you know, where you are in the process, you're more than welcome to delete the videos off of YouTube. But we do need to have access until you're given your outcome of your application.
And we do note in the accessibility guide how you should sort of like categorize the video to make sure that it's not like, you know, for public consumption, but we are able to see it. And of course, you're always welcome to ask questions if any part of that is unclear. And another question, are supplemental materials allowed or considered in the application packet?
No, they're not. And that's just for equity's sake of all the applications being very, you know, providing the same information to reviewers. So, you know, something is not like, oh, she included this, it's really cool, but then someone didn't have the opportunity to include that. So the only thing that we like say that is permissible if you want to include is references. And then we, on our formatting, we say that those need to be a separate page from your proposal. And that's outside of your proposal page requirement. But references are not required. Some people just like to write that way. But no, we are not considering supplemental. Yeah. But, oh, and another question that had came up for our last informational session was the idea of partnerships and submitting on behalf of like 2 or 3 people. So we talked about it as a team. It was a great question. It was a great idea. But because at that point that we were considering it, we had already, you know, we only have a couple weeks left of the application cycle, that it would be too late to kind of introduce this new idea of how we would do that. And also our funding is for 5 projects. And so then, you know, we'd have to figure out some things on the funding end as well. So it's something that we're taking into consideration. We love the feedback. We definitely are thinking maybe we could have our next cycle, maybe have like a partnership track in addition to an individuals track. So stay tuned for more details about that. But at this point, we're only taking applications from individuals for an individual project. With that, and that being said, like you can apply for it as an individual. I'll give the example of our fellow Kelly. You know, she's part of a team, like they're JKX Comics, but she is the fellow, and like the funds and the responsibility to do the project is on her, but she coordinates with her team to do that. So that is completely amongst them. She is our fellow. So something like that is fine. But as far as having multiple fellows on the same project, we're not equipped to do that this year.
Okay, and one last question has come in. Do fellows need to be, or do applicants need to be active on Twitter or Instagram in order to be considered for the fellowship?
So it's so funny because I have no Twitter, I have no Instagram. I have a LinkedIn, and that's because I was forced to have a LinkedIn. No, you do not have to be active on social media at all. That is not taken into account. It's not required. But if you are, we'll amplify you. So yeah. All right.
That's all the questions in the chat.
We made it, y'all. We made it right on time. I love it. I love respecting people's time. So I will say thank you for being here. We will post this recording, I think probably by Sunday, have it posted onto YouTube, and we'll have it linked on our website. And then I'll make the slides available as well. If you have any more questions, email us. It should be in the chat already. And we look forward to reviewing your applications. So please be safe, stay healthy. And we will speak to you soon. Yeah. All right, y'all. Bye.
Thank you.